think that reading is a complete waste of time, at least the way most people do it. In today's video, I'm actually going to share 6 of my favorite books with you. I'm going to share exactly how I read them and how I don't read them, and what these books can do for you in your business. Hey guys, what's going on? Yuri Elkaim here, CEO and founder of Healthpreneur. And yes, I said it, I actually don't think reading is a great idea in the way that most people do it. Here's what I mean. A lot of people set these goals of, I'm gonna read a book a week. Cool, so you read 52 books in a year. But my question to you is, how much of that book do you actually understand and comprehend and live? And I don't know how much, because a lot of, I think, today's society is built on very general, superficial knowledge about a lot of things. And I think if you want to become really, really good in your area, you have to master a few things. So my approach to reading, if you see my library, it's actually not, floor to ceiling. There might be 30, 40 books in there, but the books that I read, I tend to reread over and over again. Now, I'm not saying like I'm better than anyone else. I'm just saying this is my approach and that's worked well for me. I would rather study books as opposed to read them. So I want to share 6 books that have really influenced my journey as an entrepreneur over the past 20 years. And they vary from everything around marketing to mindset to, numbers and finance and so forth. So I'm going to walk you through what those are right now. First book, How to Be Rich. And it's by Napoleon Hill, Joseph Murphy, Wallace, Wattles, and Robert Collier. This is actually a short compilation of a lot of their different works. You've probably heard the book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That book has snippets or excerpts from that book into this one. The reason I like this one, and quite honestly, most books from this time, this was written back in, I think, the 1920s, is that although the title is How to Be Rich, it has nothing to do with finances. It has everything to do with your mindset. And you know that I'm a huge proponent of this guy up here. Everything in your life is between your ears. So I've spent a lot of time reading this book and variations. There's many other books in this series from them. But the message is one that's very similar and very much the same, which is you become what you think about, you get what you focus on, and you can do anything you want in life if you put your mind to it. I mean, like, obviously there are nuances to those, but I think it's a really, really good reminder, no matter how early or advanced you are in business, to recognize the importance of your mindset. So anything you can do to read books like this is only going to be for your benefit. The other reason I like reading older books, and this is just my philosophy, is that I find a lot of newer age books, like books that are published nowadays, I don't think they have the same intention. Like, you look at a lot of these mindset psychology experts, new age people, they're taking all their stuff from the classics and regurgitating it into a new way to hit the New York Times list. Now, I know that's a generalization, not all authors are like that, but I don't find a lot of depth from current books for the most part. I find the further back we go, the closer to the source we get, and the better the quality of the reading is. Now, I share this as a New York Times bestselling author. I think the whole publishing industry is a bit of a sham, to be honest, and I'll just share really quickly my experience. When I wrote my book, The All Day Energy Diet, my sole intention for that book was to become a New York Times bestselling author. Now, the book itself is great. I didn't cut any corners, but it's interesting. 100 years ago, there was no New York Times best-selling list, most likely. And I share that because the intention, I believe, of a lot of authors that I know today is not so much about, let me put the best stuff out there, but what do I need to do to hit the list? And I think because of that, a lot of the books that we see on the shelves now are very fluffy. They're not really meaningful. And when you find a good book, you want to hang on to that and study it. So anyways, that's the first one, How to Be Rich. Now, talking about rich, there's another book that I find super helpful as someone who naturally was someone who avoided numbers, who didn't like looking at accounting statements, who didn't even like knowing how much I had to pay in tax because I was afraid of what I was about to see. I thought ignorance was bliss. It's not. Yes, if you run a business and you don't know your numbers, it's only a matter of time before that bites you in the ass. So this book here, Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits by Crabtree, is a great, kind of like an accounting-like book for non-accountants. So if you're the CEO of your business, this is a book I would strongly recommend you read. And I have no affiliate commission in any of this stuff, guys. There's no like Amazon links in the description here with my affiliate link. I don't care if you buy them or not. I'm just sharing what I found to be useful. This book I found to be super, super eye-opening in the context of a theme or a concept called labor productivity or labor efficiency. to really recognize how efficient your team is at producing revenue and profit within the business, and how, like a lot of sports teams have salary caps, well, businesses should as well, based on how much profit they want to have at the end of the day. So there's that and a number of other concepts that I found really useful in this book. So if you want to brush up and become more literate when it comes to your numbers and be able to have an intelligent conversation with your accountant, this is a good book to read and read and read over and over again. So that's that. Now, I want to shift into what I think is probably the most useful for any business owner, any entrepreneur, no matter what your niche is. And that is to understand how humans operate. I'm going to share 4 books with you that if you only read these 4 books, and again, over and over again, not just once and forget about them, these 4 books will transform the way you see humans. They will transform the way you approach your marketing, because marketing is essentially communication to other humans. So the first one is Influence. Robert Cialdini, he's a professor at Arizona State University. This book is one of probably the earliest books when it comes to marketing that a lot of people in our industry reference. Talks about the psychology of persuasion, the 6 human influencers, things like reciprocity, social proof, commitment and consistency. If you don't understand what I'm talking about, you're behind the 8 ball. You got to brush up on this stuff, and you have to understand why these concepts are so important, because you'll start to understand how companies market to you and how you can use that to market to your audience. And I say that in the nicest, non-manipulative way possible. Like, if you look at Amazon, why do people love buying on Amazon, aside from the speed and convenience of like next day shipping? Well, when you go to Amazon and you see all the reviews, that's a form of social proof, which is one of the biggest psychological needle movers that humans are looking for. If you have like 5,000 5-star reviews, awesome. But all it takes is a couple 1-star reviews for someone to be like, you know what? I knew there was something about this. I'm going to go somewhere else. Or the fact that people like to do business with people that they actually like, or the fact that people that they actually look like or seem to be like are much more appealing to do business with. So there's a lot of really cool case studies in here, and scientific studies and all sorts of examples, even how presidents have won elections based on the fact that they were better looking than their opponents. If all that stuff sounds crazy to you, this is how we operate. And it's a great book to be reminded of that, and specifically thinking about how you can use these psychological drivers to improve your messaging, improve your marketing, improve your offers, and essentially help your business grow. Now, Cialdini also came out with another book a couple years later called Pre-Suasion. And what's interesting about Pre-Suasion is that our whole business was built on this book before the book was written, to my knowledge. My whole position with how we've built our business is that if you want the most, make it easy. If you want the best, make it hard. That's a saying our clients have heard before. It comes from the Marines. So if you want better quality clients, well, it makes sense to have them jump through some hoops. Now, other people might say your best quality clients don't want to jump through anything. They want to make it easy for them. I understand that. In my experience of 20 years, I can promise you there's a very, very big difference when you make it easy for people, what you see on the outside of that. So Persuasion is all about, if I were to boil this down to a nutshell, it's what people see before the offer greatly impacts the conversion of the offer. So let me give you an example from the book. He talks about a study that was done in this town, and they had this fictitious scenario set up where this lady was going to get mugged and her purse taken from her. So that was the experiment they had set up. Now, they had a group of guys, or they would just randomly like stop men on the street and be like, oh my God, can you help that lady? She's in trouble. And they stopped 2 different streets of guys coming through. One street had a random name. The other street was named Valentine Street. What was fascinating was that the men coming off of Valentine Street were much more likely to help the lady in distress versus those coming from the street that had nothing to do with Valentine's. It's crazy. The very name of the street influenced the behavior of the men willing to help, because we associate Valentine's with chivalry and doing something for, our loved ones. That's just one example of dozens in this book that are very, very interesting to understand, because they will help you build a better business in general, right? Like, part of our whole business, as you understand, like you probably know, we run a lot of paid traffic, and a lot of that paid traffic goes to our perfect client pipeline, which is to watch a webinar or a masterclass, which is 60 minutes, and then fill out an application to book a call with us. Why would we do that? If you've watched any of my other videos, you probably know the answer, but the reason is because I'm persuading people. I want people to watch the webinar to either not want to do business with us or be like fully sold already. I want them to fully commit to filling in an application so they know they're committed, commitment and consistency from this book. And then by the time we actually speak to them, we're not actually selling anything. They're pre-sold and we're simply just having a conversation to see if it's a fit. So I share this with you because when you understand how these concepts work, you can start to reverse engineer how to build a great business from a place that is going to meet people where they're at and help you get to where you want to go, understanding how humans do what they do or not do, okay? So Pre-Suasion, another great book by Robert Cialdini. Number 5, Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. This is a tremendous book. There's so many amazing examples in this book about why humans are so irrational. So I'll give you an example. Have you ever sold a house? Maybe, maybe not. I have a couple times. If you sold a house, did you believe the house was more valuable than the person buying the house? The answer is most likely yes. Why is that? Because we have more emotional attachment to where we live. So naturally we think it's more valuable, but it's not, yet we do think it is. And so that's why buying and selling real estate is so interesting, because we think it's worth $1 million, the market thinks it's worth 700,000, and it doesn't matter what we feel just because we live in the house. So that's just one example of like many, many examples from this book of how even if you had a sports ticket to a game that you really like, it was yours, you thought it was worth more than what people were willing to pay you for it. And again, why I love these books, they're really about human psychology, the hidden forces, as it talks about in this book, that shape our decisions. We do not act rationally. We don't. And the sooner we can recognize that, the sooner we can come to terms with the fact that it is what it is. For the longest time, I struggled because I thought people should think a certain way. Why don't they see this? Why don't they understand this? And then I started to really understand this stuff, and I was like, oh, well, that makes sense logically, but we're not logical. We're very irrational beings. And when you start to understand this, I think it gives you a bit more grace with how you approach life. And it also helps you understand how to communicate value and different situations with potential people you want to influence. So Predictably Irrational, tremendous book. Last but not least is my Kindle. Now, there's a lot of books on this Kindle, but one book I'm going to share with you that I think is an absolute must, probably one of the most important books, I had my whole team read this, is a book by Jonah Berger called The Catalyst. The Catalyst is probably, if you only had one book to read, I would say The Catalyst is the book, because The Catalyst will show you how to reduce resistance in influencing other people. Now, these books that I've just shared with you are phenomenal, but I find The Catalyst to be so, they're all very applicable, very useful, but maybe it's the fact that I read The Catalyst most recently. There were very specific things in that book that we were able to implement into our business that made a significant difference. So as an example, so one of the things Jonah Berger talks about in the book is this whole notion of reactance or resistance that's created when we tell someone to do something, or they don't feel certain about making a decision. So how can we reduce that uncertainty? And simple things like allowing people to test out what it is you're offering. What a novel idea, right? But anyways, in reading that, I had an idea for our business that generated $1.2 million in extra revenue that otherwise would not have been generated had I not thought about that coming from this book. And that's why I think this book and these others are so valuable to read, because it's not about reading them and moving on. It's about reading them, internalizing them, journaling on them, thinking about how you can apply that concept to your business. Because when you do that, there are so many gems in anything you read. But don't expect to just read something for the sake of reading it and move on. I would strongly recommend read the book, read it again, over and over again, because every single time you read it, even if you read it again next year, you'll be a different person and therefore you'll pick up different things. So those are my 6 top recommendations. Let me know in the comments, have you read any one of these? And if so, which is your favorite? And if not, is there a book you recommend? Let me know below. Hope you enjoyed this one. In 2023, we doubled our business. And even so, we still made a lot of mistakes. In this video, I want to share 3 big lessons I learned from last year that helped our business grow, and more specifically, how they can help you grow your business in 2024 and beyond.